Hey everybody, I'm back in Atlanta, a little bit change of scenery. I know it's not as interesting as my VHS collection, but after coming back I went to the movies and I saw a PG-13 January horror movie. And I decided to give it a shot. M3GAN, or M3GAN. I'm still not entirely sure how I'm going to write out the title of this movie. I don't really know what the search algorithm prefers, if I keep the 3 in there or just replace it with an E. That's what I assume most people are gonna type, but by the time I've uploaded this video and you're watching it, I've figured that out. Now, like I said, M3GAN is a PG-13 January horror movie, so it's got kind of a lot riding against it. It doesn't bode well. Most of the time when movies come out this early in January, and especially horror movies, they are just bad. Nearly unwatchable most of the time. But M3GAN actually gave me hope when I saw the trailer. The trailer was really good and it really sparked my interest in what this movie could be, and the pedigree of James Wan producing and working on the story for this movie. He didn't direct it, so I can't say this is a James Wan movie, but James Wan has very rarely let me down with his horror movies. And it's about a creepy doll thing that comes to life and kills people, kind of like Annabelle, so there's precedent there too. But really quick, this story is about Katie, and Katie lost her parents in a car accident, and now she has to be looked after by her Aunt Gemma. And Aunt Gemma really isn't prepared to be this motherly role, so lucky for her, she works at this toy company, and they've been secretly working on this Model 3 android thing that's supposed to be a kid's best friend. It's this very expensive doll that has AI, it interacts and has almost sentient level intelligence. And so she tests it out on her niece, and her niece becomes close with this doll, and her and M3GAN are, really creating a bond together. But of course it gets out of hand. M3GAN becomes very overprotective and starts killing people like the trailer suggested. And it's interesting to see the reception that this movie's gotten and seeing kind of how the consensus is that it is good. It's especially great for a January movie. This movie has scares and suspense, but also heart and a family dynamic that you can get behind and sympathize with. So it is good from a filmmaking perspective. But what I think really sets M3GAN above a lot of movies, especially kind of horror creepy doll movies that I've seen, it's that it almost plays like a Black Mirror episode, and that's what I was hoping for when I saw the trailer. I was like, oh, this has so much potential. It could be like Black Mirror. It can be this really creepy, uncomfortable dissection of what it's like to grow up around technology, surrounded by technology, practically being raised by technology, and how that affects parenting and life in the home, and where is the line between technology that helps you raise your kids versus relying on technology as a crutch to parent your kids when you don't feel like it. And like Black Mirror, this movie has a sense of humor about it. I mean, you kind of have to have a sense of humor when your premise is about this creepy animatronic doll thing that turns evil and starts killing people, but it looks like this sweet, innocent little girl that couldn't hurt a fly. So there is a bit of a sense of humor intrinsically linked in that concept, but like a lot of bad creepy doll movies, they don't always execute it the best way. And this movie, I think, executes it about as well as I could have expected. Because like Black Mirror, and actually it reminded me a lot of RoboCop, the I buy that for $1 ads, and that whole world of consumerism and how everyone's so wrapped up in what they could do, they don't think about what they should do, kind of the Ian Malcolm Jurassic Park philosophy. And from the first scene, that tone is established. And without going into spoilers, you definitely understand the tone they're going for. That's not supposed to be taken super seriously, but it's supposed to just make you think a little bit. Think about how you treat technology and how technology treats you, and whatever that relationship looks like. I think we become very dependent on technology, and it takes a movie like this to really kind of call that out and kind of put it back in its proper place. But for me, it's the performances that really stick the landing in this movie, because if you don't have characters that you care about, if you don't believe in Katie and Aunt Gemma, then what's the point? You just have this creepy doll killing people and you don't really care. And Violet McGraw, who plays Katie in this movie, has a lot on her shoulders, and she does deliver. She delivers a performance where you relate to her, you feel for her, the tragedy in her life, and at such a young age it's hard for her to process, and you do feel for her and you understand this kind of toxic relationship that she's getting with M3GAN. And even deeper than the relationship, you see how the relationship with M3GAN is actually stunting the grieving process and letting her mature out of this tragedy in her life. That whenever she's apart from M3GAN, she has to go back and deal with the grief, but she doesn't want to deal with it, so she just returns to M3GAN. It's like this addiction almost. So full credit to Violet McGraw for bringing us a really relatable Katie that really is our main character. But our other main character is Aunt Gemma, played by Allison Williams, and she has also quite a bit to do in this movie. She is the real maternal presence in this movie, and she's not qualified to be a maternal presence because she's so wrapped up in her work and her own life. She doesn't really have time for Katie. So because she's struggling with that, she turns to M3GAN as a potential solution, and that just kind of makes everything worse. And I guess this is as good a time as any to get into the messages of this movie, because this movie has a couple of them, and I think it works really well, because on the surface, okay, you have this allegory of consumerism and technology, and now technology is getting to be too much, and you could really see the dangers of M3GAN as being analogous to raising your kids on TV, or raising your kids on a tablet, or their iPhone, or their Apple Watch, or any social media of your choice. Like, whatever the new emerging technology is that kids have access to and the kids engage with, that could be educational but also isn't real and tangible. Whatever that technology is you pick, it could fit a bunch of different boxes. That is M3GAN, and I think it's a very poignant commentary on the technological world we live in and how kids are now growing up with all kinds of technology that they didn't have before. And this isn't exactly a new thing. Again, since the dawn of radio and television, parents have been concerned about kids' attachment to new technology, so it is kind of timeless in that respect, but I just see how quickly technology has progressed, even within my own lifetime, and it's kind of amazing at how much access kids have to all kinds of tech that probably aren't good for them. And if you want proof, just try to put your phone away for like 2 whole days and just see your body react and start itching and fidgeting. And seeing her and Katie's relationship as it goes throughout the movie, it does have a lot in common with how we treat technology. We see technology as kind of a part of ourselves and not the tools that they were intended to be. So with that alone, I think the movie is really effective at delivering that message in a way that's relatable, it's relevant, and it's satirical and comedic. The movie has, like I said before, a sense of humor. It doesn't take itself too seriously, so there are moments where it's okay to laugh at kind of the absurdity of it, because that's kind of the point. But there's also a deeper message that I picked up on, and I haven't really seen anybody else talk about this. I don't even know if it was the director or producer's intention to have this in there, but I saw it and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. In fact, this is the reason I decided to make it this week's video, because I thought this message was so cleverly woven into the narrative that it probably flew under the radar of most people. And what this movie truly is, I believe, is a commentary not necessarily just about technology, but about parenting and different types of parents. And specifically, I'm going to be talking about different types of moms, because there really isn't much of a father role in this movie. It's really about maternal instinct and how moms raise their kids. And I think if there was a father figure in this movie, there is something that you could do with that, but this movie clearly wanted to focus on women, so I'm going to just go with moms. But what this movie shows is a dichotomy between the type of mom that's like Gemma, who's kind of absent. She's a career mom. She spends a lot of time at work. That's her major priority. Doesn't really spend a lot of time with the kids. And in the case of this movie, Gemma is so far on the business side, she doesn't really have time or really any interest in exploring the parental side. So that's danger number one. But danger number two is the other extreme, where you have M3GAN, the thing that is actually raising Katie throughout the majority of this movie. And it's the overprotective mom, your Munchausen mother, the type of mom who wraps all of her identity around her kid, keeping the kids safe, protecting her, spending every waking moment with her. And that's not exactly healthy either. Again, I think this movie illustrates that there is a balance to be struck here, and we just see the two extremes in this movie. We see the absent mother and we see the overbearing mother. And when you combine the overbearing mother with the technology that is raising your children, that becomes something very frightening indeed. And this movie turns it on. This is a horror movie at the end of the day, and when it does have to be a horror movie, it delivers. There's some really intense sequences of violence, of killings, of kids getting run over by trucks. And I guess this is where I should talk about the PG-13 nature of this movie, because it does feel like the movie is holding back when it goes all in on the horror side of its premise, which I think is the less interesting side of the movie. For me, I think the whole Black Mirror thing about technology corrupting your children and what it's like to be a parent in this technological world and how much control should you give over to technology, I think that is all super interesting, and I loved it when the movie focused on that. But, you know, it's a crowd pleaser horror movie in January. You gotta get butts in the seats. So when it goes full horror, it doesn't feel like it's going full horror in the same way Violent Night went all out with its violence. Because, like, that movie, bloodbath, total violence, total creativity. I mean, I love that movie too. But this one, it feels like it was pulled back. The camera kind of cuts away from the truly graphic moments. And I feel like a lot of the on-screen graphic moments were toned down in post-production. They didn't get the same blood splatters that you might expect from a story like this. And at first this really bothered me, not just because it felt like the movie was holding back, but because there's some really obvious edits in dialogue, because I swear this movie was shot to be rated R and they had to pull it back to PG-13. I think maybe when the release date got confirmed and they were like, oh, it's January, we got to get butts in the seats, so let's get the teenagers in, and even just preteens, you know, that want to see a creepy doll movie, they're going to want to watch it, so PG-13. But bad lip syncing aside, and yeah, it is kind of distracting when you see it, I do think that this movie does work best as a PG-13 movie. Not because I think the story is necessarily stronger in the PG-13 setting, but because it's more accessible to younger audiences. And I think a big element in this movie is not just to cater to parents and to have parents kind of question how they're raising their kids, but also to have kids question their relationships with the technology. I think a lot of kids are going to relate to Katie in this movie and really start to think about their relationship with their tablet or their iPhone or whatever technology that has kind of consumed them, and maybe start to want to set boundaries. I don't know, maybe that's too optimistic. Maybe I'm still coming off of the optimism from Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. But I saw this movie, I was like, well, this has a message for kids to set boundaries with their technology, to hold themselves accountable, but also, of course, for the parents. I think a lot of the parents are going to relate to Aunt Gemma and her dilemma of how much technology to give the kid and how much time to spend with them while also trying to provide. But just like Mary Poppins, yes, I know it's weird to bring up Mary Poppins in a movie about a killer robot, but in Mary Poppins it was the same way. You had a message for adults and a message for kids, and they both worked together. It felt like it flowed, and that's why the whole family can sit down and watch it and enjoy it. And while M3GAN may not be as family friendly, and definitely not for the whole family, it's still a very rare thing to see a movie that has messages that are applicable to both demographics. And that's really my metric for a family movie. A family movie doesn't have to be the most clean-cut, you know, non-offensive thing that you can put out there that'll just please everybody. No, a family movie, a true family movie, has to be something that has something relevant for both the kids and adults in equal parts. And it's very rare to find, especially in the horror genre. This was the last place I expected to find it, but I was so impressed with how this movie addresses these issues that I kind of fell in love with it. And the more I thought about it, the more I liked how this movie brought about these commentaries. And I think that having this movie be PG-13 allows more of the younger demographics to experience this. So at the end of the day, if I have to put up with some less than stellar lip syncing or some really strange editing choices when it comes to the action sequences, in order for younger teenagers to understand technology and how to set up proper boundaries with their devices, I'll take that any day. But now I turn over to you guys. What do you think about M3GAN? Did you like it? Did you get as much out of it as I did? Or am I just projecting stuff onto the movie that isn't really there? Whatever you think, let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more content, and hit the notification bell to be notified every time I upload a video. And as always, I'm Colby. This is my nerdy talk, and I'll see you in the next video.